I think it was really interesting to hear that. I think it was obvious that all of us share very personal experiences. It seems that nobody knew what to expect at the beginning, but we did find our way to be here with you today. So we will start with some of the questions that we received online. And the first question will be for Aaron, our provost. Oh, so Aaron, you talked about the process and how to obtain the PhD, but many of our colleagues here in the audience are actually interested in how to land a PhD. So the first question is, what are the key elements that make a successful PhD application? So if they would like to apply for a PhD, what would be the parts that would be critical? And a related question is that if someone doesn't have a research experience already, do they still have a chance to get a PhD offer?
Okay. Okay. So obviously, you know, it depends on a lot of factors, right? One of them is what topics you are, how familiar are you with the general topics? You're not an expert, but when you talk to an would-be advisor, is to say, hey, you know, I'm very interested in this topic. You know, here's what I read about it. I think genuinely showing curiosity in the topic, knowing what you want to do is important. Because, like I said, you know, I've encountered students who thought they wanted to study something like that, but came in and realized it's not what they want. And it's very painful. Okay, so that's one. Now, the second question is whether you should have a research background before you come in. Obviously, if you have a sort of an undergraduate research background, it's very helpful because why? You already know what is expected to some extent. I think if you don't, doesn't mean you cannot. I think, you know, again, there will be an interview process. If, you know, show genuine interest, show, you know, justify that you have done, you know, taken the right courses, that shows someone who is sort of committed. And so, you know, usually when we fill up a form on people we interview, right, for PhDs, that, you know, how willing are you to mentor a candidate? And the question is really asking, you know, what do you think this candidate is he or she going to be able to stick it out and succeed? I think that's the question. So that's what we are trying to get at when we interview you.
So maybe I can just add to that from my personal experience. So at NUS, undergraduate students have plenty of opportunities to conduct research, but not all of the universities offer that. So it is not expected to have some research experience when applying for a PhD. So it comes handy. It does show that you have some experience, but it is not required. So if you do not have previous research experience, some of the examples that you can emphasize during your application process is how you approach different problems in your life, or do you have any other experiences that are somehow similar to research? How do you define a problem and you face a problem? How do you solve a problem? Another thing from the advisor perspective is be precise or be at least informed about the research in that particular group. One of the worst things that one can do is just to have a very generic email being sent to hundreds of potential advisors. So I can tell you that we received many of these, but what is really, really close to our heart when we realize that an applicant really read our paper, that they took an effort to check the website and that they know what we are doing, at least roughly. So try to be familiar with the general field of research and show that you have some knowledge about what is being done in that group. So that would be an advice here. So Uzair, so you talked about your journey, but maybe you can tell us about some of the key opportunities and skill sets that you gained during the PhD that have been critical in your journey as an entrepreneur later on.
Sure.
So when you started your PhD, you did not necessarily know you will end up at this point, but...
Oh, definitely not, yeah. So as Prof. Aaron was mentioning that PhD, you as a candidate don't have the answer. Your supervisor doesn't have the answer. So you have to learn how to be independent. So that's, I think, the first quality and trait that is really, really important. How do you handle uncertainty says a lot about your character, says a lot about your resilience. Now it goes to say that you need this during a PhD, and then you need this during a startup as well. Second is when I came to Singapore, as I mentioned in 2017, to be very honest, I knew the word entrepreneurship as a word only. I still don't know what it is. but it's just the academic tradition of knowing more and more about less and less, unless you know about until you know everything about nothing. So the more I do, the less it becomes, is how I feel these days. But during PhD, I would say being independent really helped me through that journey, because as I mentioned, 2017, 18, 19, I didn't have a journal publication. Now it's a very quantitative thing to say, but it adds pressure to you. Like as again, Prof. Aaron was mentioning, you are on a deadline, money will run out. So you have to be mindful of that, yeah. And you have to respect the fact that your advisor took you in, and then you graduate within the deadlines. So all that navigating through the journey of my PhD allowed me to understand how I as a person can handle uncertainty. And by the end of it, the exposure I got is another thing that I would just like to highlight. Through NUS, you can see like so many things, so many places, you can meet so many people, you can collaborate with so many institutes that I can honestly say, right now, if you think about it, you cannot grasp the gravity of it. So many opportunities lie, but the fact is you have to capitalize on them. I'm also against just going to a lab studying and just going back to the room and sleeping. You really have to push yourself. So during my PhD, I completed that in 3.5 years. 6 months I spent in a startup just because I was curious. So curiosity has a very key role to play here as well. And after my PhD, I wanted to challenge myself, pursue my conviction in the privacy engineering landscape. So the startup is just the way of putting myself in the fire, challenging myself, and then pushing me out of my limits. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe a quick follow-up question. So Professor Aaron mentioned about learning from failures, and in your presentation you also mentioned that you have gone through the GRIP program. You did not succeed, but look at you now, right? So maybe you can tell us about what did you learn from that process and the fact that it did not work out for the first time.
So I think one of the things I see in many people, not just here, like within my network, is they don't have a healthy relationship with mistakes. Someone makes a mistake, they're pissed off, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're agitated. And to me, it's like, why? Whenever we learn new things, we make mistakes. And if we don't learn from mistakes, then our personal growth and professional as well won't happen. So making mistakes is not a problem, repeating them is. So that discipline actually is on the person itself. How we have, like what kind of a relationship we have with mistakes, and essentially how do we capitalize on them, yeah.
Great, thank you. So Doreen, the next question is for you. So again, many of us did not really know what we would like to do eventually after pursuing PhD. I don't know what was the case for you, but now you do work in the industry sector. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about thinking retroactively. If there are some of our colleagues here who are in the audience and do know that they want eventually to end up in industry position after PhD, is there any advice that you would give them? How can they sharpen their skill sets relevant for industry work during the PhD program? Any general advice retroactively?
Yeah. Thanks for your question. I think, so I actually started in chemistry. I'm still working on materials chemistry. So I actually work on different materials, very different from what I'm actually working on now. And when I first started, like I mentioned, during my undergraduate, I'm actually working on catalysts for more on renewable energy, so kind of production. And then my PhD is actually a very big topic on foam inhibition. So now I'm actually moving to another industry, which is the semicon industry, where I actually work on different elements. But how I actually kind of look at materials in a whole, we're actually looking at cross-disciplinary kind of topics. So before, when I literally look at other metal oxides, I actually see some similarities where I actually draw certain ideas from previous experience. And from there, I actually have more ideas at how I can actually apply to my current research. And now when I actually work in the industry, I think more importantly is more of the transferable skills where we can actually think critically, analyze complex data, and how we actually have a logical thought flow when we actually kind of present our data or discuss and actually leverage on the expertise of our colleagues as well. All this effective communication will be actually very helpful in the industry. Yeah, thanks.
Great, Doreen, thanks. So I think a couple of times we mentioned the concept of the corporate lab during the presentations. So I just wanted to clarify. We also talked about the benefits of doing PhD at NUS, and we did mention amazing research, amazing facilities. But one of the things that really separates NUS from many other universities in the world is the concept of the corporate lab and working very closely with industry. So for those of you who eventually are thinking, you are deciding about what will be eventually your path, NUS does offer multiple opportunities, including the concept of working with the corporate lab, which is a concept where the researchers, academics from the university work shoulder to shoulder with industry partners, working on the immediate problems that are relevant for the world right now. So if you're thinking about these career opportunities or you're still undecided, again, one more reason to think about NUS. So Aaron, so also from the perspective of an advisor, what are the abilities and character traits or strengths do professors and universities look for from PhD applicants? So personally, when you are choosing PhD candidates, what are you looking for?
Good question. So I've worked there mostly in the States, in the West. So one thing that's important to me, and it doesn't matter whether the students come in with it or not, is the sense of curiosity. So when they come in, then you ask questions and they discuss. That's what I'm looking for. At least for the students that come into my group, to develop that before they leave the group. It's important because, as I said, right, we may not know the answers, but if we discuss it, we can teach each other, right? So that's why silent is not good. So I would love to see people raise their hands, ask question, engage. That's the important thing, because I know that some of us are introverts, so we spend much of our time as undergraduates studying and taking tests, which is a very lonely individual business. Yes, you study with friends, but it's not the same. But when you go and do research, you choose research as your career path, it's about communication, it's about understanding new ideas, generating new ideas, and engaging the community, your team. I think this is why I believe those are the important traits that I always, if I'm not looking for it, I would like to develop that for you. Yeah.
So maybe we can turn the question and ask Doreen and Uzair, how did you choose your PhD advisors? Some of them are here.
Yeah, actually my professor is right there, Prof. Biplav. So my story evolved in this way. So as I mentioned, at the end of my bachelor's, even though I graduated as the valedictorian, I like to think I did good, but the conviction was I should have done computer science because I was just really attracted to the discipline itself. Plus, I love video games as well. I still play them to date, PlayStation 1 all the way to PlayStation 5. So my angle really was to go pursue higher education in the field of computer science. And within computer science, when it came to which topics to choose, I had an inclination towards security and privacy for reasons, to be honest, I cannot explain. Yeah. Now, the fact that I did my PhD on that is the evidence that my conviction was right. And after my PhD is the same for privacy engineering as well. And I want to make it right by taking the startup in that direction as well. So very honestly, I didn't have a full idea about what I'm going to do in my PhD. But one thing that I was really hell-bent on was higher education. And whenever I do something, I just take it to the extreme end. So you do or you don't. Now, within academia, PhD is the highest distinction you can get. So that was my belief. But again, spending 4 years, 5 years, or in some cases 6 years as well, on one topic, it's a very, very big commitment. And if you haven't met people, there are people who spend maybe a year or two on a topic and they just find out that this is not for me. So, I mean, reaching to that realization is a very non-linear path. Like I mentioned, I did my master's. I tried to do my master's, didn't like, I just dropped out. Rather than see it through the 2 years and just, cross my fingers and see what happens. So you really have to be very self-conscious in terms of what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, then focus on what you don't want to do, and the answer will reveal itself. So addition by subtraction. So I started on a very macro level, but as I dive deeper, my interest became more and more. Yeah. So yeah, here what we are doing with Betterdata is everything about privacy, and yeah, loving it.
So I think from my experience, my PhD supervisor is actually my undergraduate final year supervisor as well. So when choosing my final year project, I actually look at the different topics. So I actually choose based mainly on the research topics first. So I was interested in materials. So I actually kind of narrow down the professors who are actually working on related research. And then I actually emailed them and actually meet up with them to actually discuss potential projects. So I actually interacted with the students as well, the current undergraduate, postgraduate students, so to gain some insights into the supervision style of the supervisor. So that's how I actually kind of selected my professor. Yeah.
Great. So, Arun, so you also talked about your motivation to pursue PhD, motivated by interest in semiconductors, and then you talked about quantum dots. So some of the questions that we received is whether the supervisors will help the PhD candidates define their research project. So sometimes the conception is that PhD students come up with their own ideas or they assert the problem. But maybe you can tell us about what would be your answer.
My answer. Okay, so I see. Okay, so this is a interesting question. Why? Because at what point do you decide on a thesis topic? Okay, and how do you converge on a thesis topic, right? So there are many factors, and I'll just recount what I do with my students, right? So I have students who, obviously, I welcome students with ideas that come in, and my job, you see that one thing, my job is an advisor, not a teacher. So I advise, right? I'm here to help the person, sort of do the research. So the first thing I would do is say, yes, let's explore the topic, right? And then now sometimes along the way, the students might figure out that this is not the right topic, or the advisor will figure out that, hey, this is not something that we can get it done within the time frame. That's when we have that back and forth to redefine it. So, the topic is really something that you work out over a period of time. That period of time is very well defined, is within 2 years, right? Because by the time you go for your qualifying exam, you better know what you want to do, because you have 2 years left, apparently. So that's it. The process is a discovery process in itself. And I have students that come and say, I really want to do this. I think this is the most important thing. I never contradict them. I say, okay, let's try it out. And then if it works, continue and gets to that 2 year mark. If it doesn't, let's change. It's okay, right? It's that discovery process.
Great. So in the spirit of the PhD, and just to test whether you're ready for PhD, I know it was mentioned we won't be taking the questions from the ground, but many of the questions that were asked online, we already addressed through presentations. So I would give an opportunity for those of you who are here, if you have any questions for the panel members. We have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions.
Don't be shy.
Curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity is the first step. Anybody?
Yes.
I had a question. For one of the reasons for choosing a PhD, it was mentioned that like you want to sort of switch your field and what you want to study in. So if like hypothetically, if you're coming in from like a sciences background, but you want to do like a PhD in let's say engineering, right?
Yeah.
I know there are necessary classes that you have to take, and there's necessary GPA requirements to maintain scholarships. Is that sort of possible? Do you guys see that very often?
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I take that.
So if you don't mind repeating the question for our
Yeah,
online
so
audience.
there are 2 questions embedded in that, right? If I hear correctly. One is, if someone is switching discipline, undergraduate to graduate school, right? Is that possible, and how likely does that happen? Second is, it's a GPA question. It's a different question. It says that, if my GPA don't meet the cutoff, can I still do a graduate school? Okay, there are two questions embedded. Did I capture that? Or did I miss something else?
Sort of, it was like because I heard to maintain the PhD scholarship.
Oh, maintain
You
it.
have to maintain the GPA.
Okay, you're afraid that, the coursework, basically, you're afraid that you might not. Okay, so I had 2 students. One, I think, one with physics background and one with molecular, BME. Okay, both not in semiconductors. Did fantastic okay, the reason why is because this is the secret truth about about doing a PhD. Yes, the coursework, yes, you need to be relevant and you pick, but there are choices you can do, right? The research part, if most of the answers are to be found by you, means that a lot of it are anyway dependent on what you read and what you can understand. So to put it simply is that you learn on the job mostly. Okay, so if you have a good mind, you are curious, you can put in the work, it doesn't matter what discipline. Now, obviously, the further you are from discipline-wise from what you're working in, the gap is going to be larger, right? You have to pick up on your own more. That's the only thing. But some of the things that we work on are so far advanced, even the people in the field itself don't know, right? They may know the language, what this means and that, but they don't necessarily understand that. So there is a way around that problem, right? Now, keeping your GPA, yes, we expect you to do well in your coursework. So make sure that you talk to your peers, pick the right classes, and then make sure that, and they may or may not be completely relevant to the research topic you do, but it's for your own learning. It's important. Pick the right classes and spend time doing the homework. Yeah.
So if I may add to this question, because it's related to one of the questions that we received online, is the change of the direction or the major, in a sense, right? So you have seen from a couple of our speakers today is that they changed their field. Doreen was trained as a chemist. Now she works in semiconductor industry. I was trained as an astrophysicist. I'm now a material scientist. So switching the fields can be challenging, but as long as you're curious and you know how to learn, that's not a problem, right? And the other aspect of that is looking at the same problem, but with a different set of eyes. Looking at a semiconductor through the eye of a chemist very often helps. So don't be afraid. So, and if you have any doubts, talk with your PhD advisor and try to see if the gap between the disciplines is too huge or there is a natural transition. Right? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Profs, for the sharing of the thinking behind how to get a PhD. And my name is Jiaqi. I'm trained in architecture and now working in an energy industry. And my question is about, is there any part-time part-time PhD program at NUS for our consideration, and how to decide to involve in academia or industry after graduating. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I think this is maybe I'm in a better position to answer the questions. Generally, we do not encourage students to do part-time PhD, partly because there are certain things in life that, as what Uzair said, you have to do it wholeheartedly, more than wholeheartedly. You don't do things half-heartedly during the day. You do something in the evening, weekend you work on something. It's very difficult to make that kind of to become the kind of masters. Okay, so we do have PhD students who are kind of like doing on a part-time basis, but their work is actually closely related to what they do, in their day job. So maybe they work as a research scientist in one of the labs in the government, and then their PhD is kind of like very closely related to the subject. Okay, there's only 24 hours a day, but rule of thumb is unless you spend really a substantial time on your PhD, it's unlikely that you'll get the PhD within that 4 or 5 years and also make that kind of breakthroughs that we expect in a PhD. Okay, so it's not advisable, but it's probably not advisable. I have to be honest on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I think in the interest of time, we will start concluding this panel, but I would like to offer an opportunity for each of you to give a couple of closing remarks, or if you forgot anything. So Aaron, maybe we start with you.
Okay. Like I said, it's a commitment, right? It will transform your life. I hope for good. But I think it's the ultimate training. I think the final personal reward you get from this is, besides, you learn very deeply about something, is that you know that you can actually conduct research on your own. I think this is the most important. And speaking from a person who has both been in industry and academia, there's high value. You'll be operating at the level that most of your peers won't be, who have not gotten a PhD. So, do consider it. It's a commitment, I say, and everybody's journey is a bit different.
Doreen?
If you are passionate about material science, I think a PhD will actually provide you a rewarding path to actually join the semiconductor industry, where you can actually contribute meaningful impact, contribution to technological advancement. Thank you.
So whether you decide to do a PhD or not, as a video gamer myself, play like you've never lost and practice like you've never won. So be curious and keep growing.
So I'm not sure how to top this off, except to say, for those of you who have decided to pursue PhD, it will be an amazing journey. We hope that you will do it here at NUS. There are amazing opportunities. For those of you who are still thinking, hopefully we help you to convince you that this is, again, an amazing journey. We are here to help you. And if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.